everybody. I have asked the studio to send you a copy of the scene between Jill and Austin from John Patrick Shanley's The Big Funk. The first line is, "Excuse me, join me for a beer." I also would like you to download the 3-page scene analysis or breakdown and to at least fill in the 3-part section that begins, "What do I say about myself?" First, I would like to say from Rachel Patterson and all of us at the studio that we are wishing you comfort and health during this difficult time, a time that we are doing our best to use to enrich your growth as an actor. I'm Adrianne Curry, and I've been teaching here, well, not here because I'm at home like the rest of you, but at Acting Studio Chicago and several other places for, oh my goodness, about 17 years. Wow. Anyway, I am calling the first part of my video tutorial series Adrianne Curry's Coronavirus Cornucopia, which you might notice would be a pretty good vocal warm-up, tongue-twisting exercise. Adrianne Curry's Coronavirus Cornucopia. Adrianne Curry's Coronavirus Cornucopia. Curry's Coronavirus Cornucopia. Curry's Coronavirus Cornucopia. You get it. Give it a shot. Anyway, I am hoping that the first part of this series is the super fun part, so that when you're sitting at home on the sofa at night and watching the tube, you get to learn a little more about actors and acting and the whole preparation process, and you don't feel like you're stagnating during this time. So away we go to the plays and or films that I'm asking you to read and or watch during this period. I'm doing this because, well, frankly, they're all really great plays and or films, and also because several of them are plays or films that I tend to reference in class, so it's good for you to have access to my references, right? Now, I know that libraries are closed right now, but most of them have gone fully digital, so this would be a good time for you to make sure that your library card is updated and maybe to search through that database. Okay, let's start with John Patrick Shanley's movie, Moonstruck. I know, I love the guy. What can I say? And if you have not seen Moonstruck, or even if you've seen it before, you owe it to yourself to catch this flick, maybe for the second time around. You get such a good idea of the New York milieu of its time, and also the Italian-American milieu. You can really see how at least some of the people talk and move and gesture and relate and argue and love one another. It's just so fun. And then, to continue with the John Patrick Shanley theme, I would ask that you read and then watch the movie of Doubt. Read the play first, then watch the movie. This is a way for you to be sure that you decide if you think it's improved or not by moving it to the big screen. And trust me, it's a pretty short read. You can do it in very little time. Next, I would ask you to do the same for Chicago's very own Tracy Letts, his play, August Osage County. Please read the play first. It's a fabulous, exciting, constantly changing and surprising play. It will take you longer because it is a longer play. However, I think having read the play, knowing the play actually helps you when you observe the film. It helps fill in the gaps that inevitably happen because you've shrunken a nearly 4-hour play to about 2 hours on screen. Then I would ask that you read and then watch Glengarry Glen Ross by David Mamet. I mean, in the film, they actually add a character. The guy played by Alec Baldwin, he's not even in the play. And oh wow, talk about a multitude of examples of competition. It's just amazing. I want to remind you that I am suggesting these plays and these films because they're great, yes, but also because they have so many examples, varied examples of discoveries, of events, of humor, of competition, of place and time, as well as role-playing and game-playing. A classic that I would ask you to both read and watch is Tennessee Williams' A Streetcar Named Desire. Now, you may be somewhat familiar with this, but it's worth the revisit. And the film, directed by Elia Kazan, is fantastic. I mean, talk about an example of place and time. These women were barely out of corsets, and then the lead dude, Stanley Kowalski, shows up in his muscle tees. Wow. Then another great flick alone, is watch Silence of the Lambs. Although I do warn you, please either don't be alone or just double check that all the doors are locked, okay? First, you will see an incredible example of the use of opposites in Anthony Hopkins. As usual, he has a great performance in this movie. But then you will see an actress, Brooke Smith, who changes tactics so frequently in such a way that elicits our sympathy incredibly. And not because she's weeping and wailing and moaning because she's the victim of the lead killer, but precisely because by the time we actually meet her, we see that she realizes the futility of doing so and takes the situation quite literally into her own hands. I mean, talk about an example of importance, of stakes. It couldn't be higher. There it is. Then there are two more specific performances that I'd like you to take a look at. The first is, I love him, Anthony Hopkins in Howard's and the film. This was a film done several years ago. It's not the miniseries that's on television right now. It's a time when he uses a gesture, an unconscious gesture that is so beautiful and heart-wrenching. He must admit to his fiancée of a shame that he has. His fiancée is the fabulous Emma Thompson. And if I recall correctly, they are sitting next to each other. She is to his right on, oddly enough, sort of a grassy knoll. And he is about to confess, and this unconscious gesture happens. He whips his hand up to the side of his face. It's as though he can't bear to be seen fully naked, fully exposed. And even though England is hardly a Catholic country, it's like he erects this metaphorical confessional wall so that he can hide at least some of his shame while he admits his past to her. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful film in general. And then another one to watch is To Kill a Mockingbird with Gregory Peck, in a performance that I believe is the best of his career. Watch when he is in the courtroom. He's describing how he thinks Mr. Ewell felt when he saw his daughter, Mayella, in romantic congress, shall we say, with a black man. And although Mr. Ewell runs into the house and beats the crap out of Mayella, he later covers it up, right? So Gregory Peck does this gesture like this, as though he's trying to describe how Mr. Ewell must push away that sight, put it away in a locked drawer, put it away from the eyes of his neighbors and even from his own eyes. Now, this one is different because it's a somewhat conscious gesture used to illustrate what he believes Mr. Ewell felt at the time. It's brilliant. Take a look. A couple of other flicks I want to mention because I often refer to them in class are Fatal Attraction, Thelma and Louise, and Clueless. And I'd like to toss out a few more plays and playwrights, all of whom are contemporary players. First, we have Stephen Adly Guirgis and Annie Baker, particularly her Aliens and the Flick. Teresa Rebeck and Sarah Treem, both of whom write a lot for television. There are locals, Brett Neveu, Lisa Dillman, Rebecca Gilman, Marissa Wertzkin, whose name I know I'm pronouncing wrongly. Sorry, Marissa. Also, Sarah Ruhl, R-U-H-L. I was supposed to direct her Eurydice before the plague descended. Rajiv Joseph. Oh, Lynn Nottage's Sweat and Her Intimate Apparel, which is a beautiful play and was supposed to be done at the Northlight but had to shut down. And finally, absolutely any play by Arthur Miller or August Wilson. By Arthur Miller, of course, there's All My Sons and The Crucible, not to mention Death of a Salesman. And by August Wilson, Fences and The Piano Lesson are favorites of mine. Now, I know this may seem like I'm just making these recommendations for fun, but I want to remind you that although acting teachers are known for saying, you are enough, we say that because we don't want you to go out thinking that acting is about learning how to mimic someone else. It isn't. It is about expanding you. And so, since we are or should be interested in others, I hope that by reading and watching these plays, these films, that we learn, we observe, we stretch our imaginations with recognizing what motivates people who maybe at first seem so unlike us. We climb into their shoes and we can play them honestly with the truth of their time and place. So yeah, I want you to have fun, but know and seek out that bigger and more enlightening and broadening lesson of these recommendations. Hi, I'm back, and I hope you are too, and that you've read The Scene from The Big Funk. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly go through Jill's and Austin's, and from two students I may currently have, or maybe I've had in the past. It'll be a mystery to all of you people out there. And I'll tell you what's great about what they sent me, what could be added to it. One of them I already have previous notes on. Another one I'm kind of reading afresh in a way. And so here we go. Jill and Austin in The Big Funk. First, we'll go through Jill's facts. Remember, you're writing down only the facts, not inferences. This woman wrote, "We are in a bar. I just came in from a date gone wrong with a man named Gregory. Gregory dumped a jar of grease on me. Austin wants to give me a bath at his apartment." And I write, she is greasy. That is a fact. Why is it a fact? Because it's confirmed by him, that being Austin, later in the scene, right? But the how she got so cannot be verified in this scene. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm very aware of the fact that in modern day life, we can almost read all plays online and you could get that information or you could get a synopsis. But let's say you were rushed and you couldn't get that information. You don't know except from how she says it happened, which I do believe. I do believe it is true. But then again, it can't be verified by this man named Gregory. So it's not yet a fact. He says, that being Austin, he wants to give you a bath. Thus, it is under what others say. It's not verified until much later in the play, as I recall. It's important to recognize that you, Jill, do your best to determine if that is really what he means. Does he mean he wants to give you a bath? Or does he mean something nastier, shall we say, more carnal? And that is something you, Jill, must figure out. You don't know it, right? And this is not, as I always say to my Jills, this is not a normal thing. You meet a man in a bar, and then he tells you he wants to give you a bath. A big one that I say, an additional fact is, Jill and Austin come into the bar separately, but they leave together. Fact, right? Simple, absolute fact, and yet it tells us a lot. So you need to be able to glean those. My fellow writes, "I'm in a bar, it is evening, Jill is covered in grease. I am out of work as an actor, good. That's elsewhere and a little earlier in the scene, but I'm going to go with it, he is. Jill and I have beers in front of us that I've bought. I have a handkerchief. I feel lonely at the top of the scene." I would say that I feel lonely at the top of the scene goes into inferences only. We can't call that a fact. That's an emotional state, right? And he does actually put it later in his inferences, because I did just read through this 3-page scene analysis. We are going to move on, and because under the what do I say about myself, what do others say about me, what do I say about others, you know what you're supposed to do, I hope, and that is write down everything, single thing, literally, that falls under those categories. But an example I will give you is this actress put down 3 I'm greasies. There are 4. Okay. And the reason I say that's important is you don't want every one of them to sound alike, right? You want each I'm greasy to sound different, to maybe have a different action behind it, right? Or are you, oh my God, discovering it in one moment, and then are you realizing, oh Dios mío, I am greasy in public? Do you ever seek pity for it? Do you seek confirmation of it from Austen, right? Those are a few things one can do. And that's why it's very important to write down those repeated lines so that you are putting different actions, different thoughts, discoveries, etc. behind them. Okay? So I'm going to move beyond, as I said, the what I say about myself, what others say about me, etc. I'm not poo-pooing it at all, but I'm just going to let you do it, and we're going to move to, oh wait, there is one more I'm going to say. This Jill wrote down under what do others say about me, she wrote, because I'm a two-face, a liar, a whore, my mother was totally right about me, and I'm all greasy, etc., with the greasies. And what I suggested to her is, yes, you say your mother says that about you. So it's rather more important that it's under that category. And then later, you must infer, why is it that your mother said those awful things about you? And why are you repeating it now? Is this a sort of confession of your own feeling about being those horrible things? Is it an admission of how crappy your mother was to call you that? Right? So it's a little bit under both. And again, I would say to you that if you're not sure which category it falls under, put it under both. The act of writing in particular, not so much typing, but of writing, makes the lines yours. You come to own them. You come to think, my God, why am I telling this guy this? Right? It helps it become part of your bones. So I'm going to give you some of their inferences, and then we'll take a little pause after that. What inferences can I make about the relationship from points 1 through 4 above? She writes, we are strangers who have gotten to know quite a lot about each other in a very short amount of time. I came into this bar looking to nurse my wounds after a bad date, and I wind up running into this guy who is trying to save me. I'm tough and I don't want to be saved, but at the same time, if I truly didn't want to be saved, I would have left long before Austen invited me to his bathtub. I basically put a check mark. I think that's very well done. I think she's making proper inferences. I think it's super well done. I'm going to read what the fella said. I feel lonely at the top of the scene. There is something before the scene actually begins, which I think all of you would have had, where he talks to the audience. And I want to refer to that because it goes back to the Greeks and to Shakespeare. When Tricky Dick from Richard III talks to the audience, he doesn't lie to us. He tells us the truth. This is a theatrical convention. When I break the fourth wall and I talk to you, I tell you the truth. Even if I am Richard III, I go, hey, you know what? I just killed that woman's husband and I'm going to go seduce her. Watch me. And then he comes back and tells us, look at that. I did it. So it's a general truism that when you break the fourth wall and talk to the audience, you're telling the truth. Austen, just before this scene begins, says, I had another beer and another. That means a minimum of 3 beers. We can infer something about that. Even a large man, once he's had 3 beers, a little tipsy, right? And he tells us, we see a little bit of the conversation he had with his friend as well. He continues to write. about the loneliness. That's what motivates me to call out to Jill. I believe I can get Jill to like and trust me by listening to her, asking her questions that make her open up to me. However, she responds in ways I am not anticipating. Great discoveries. So I can't play my usual game. Eventually, I get so frustrated that I have to abandon my tactic of getting her to open up and instead reveal what is motivating me to talk to her. This finally gets Jill to trust me, which I wasn't expecting, and now she will do what I want, which is to go to my apartment so I can give her a bath. Now, that is something he says about himself that he wants to do for her, right? Everybody, the audience, Jill, we have to decide if he really means to bathe her or if he means something more carnal. I think it's proven that he does mean to bathe her or to cleanse her, to save her, to purify her. We're going to take a little break now. Thank you so much.